Hi, folks. Welcome to another episode of Film Study. This is Ken McCusick here for this week's episode of One Last Thing with co-host Slava Cooperstein. Slava, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ken. Sitting here with my dog Mason, named after Derek Mason, in my lap, and just reveling in a great week of football.
Is that an old dog?
No, he's only 3, but that's how long I will hold the Derek Mason torch. I desperately love him.
That is a serious torch bearing there. I appreciate that. Well, obviously some bad news coming out of this last game. Some good and some bad. Obviously, the Bengals are down a quarterback, which is very bad for them. They have a very dirty player. Having a dirty player in division is not a good thing with Logan Wilson. And unfortunately, that hit them up once. It almost hit them up a second time in an even more severe way with the loss of Andrews and the ugly tackle on the sidelines of Jackson as well. And now the Ravens face kind of an uphill battle in terms of how they replace a player who's so integral to their offensive way of doing business.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate to be the kind of "I told you so" guy, but I have been saying for weeks that it would be very smart for the Ravens to kind of start integrating some of the forgotten people in their offense into their offense in the event that they lose somebody. Luckily, it's never a good time, but luckily this isn't something that they're figuring out, heading right into the playoffs. They have 5 weeks, 5-6 weeks to really figure out who they're gonna use to kind of make up for the really the gaping hole that Andrews leaves.
One of those, of course, is a bye week, so it's 7 weeks until the playoffs begin. One bye week in 6 games still for the Ravens to play. A good opportunity for them to see what they have with Likely and Kolar for starters. Likely a guy who's gotten, I knew his targets would be reduced, but he's got even fewer targets than that, frankly, at this point. And Charlie Kolar, who's had almost no opportunities, had his first catch since week 1 in this last game. Actually, his first target since week 1, his first catch of the season this last week.
And hey, he made good on it. So that's a positive. But yeah, I think Likely and Cole are naturally where you start. I think this is really going to be the first time we're going to really see what Kolar will meaningfully look like in this offense. You start to wonder whether Monken will sort of implement some of these 2 tight end sets that we thought he might be using, coming out of his sort of schemes in Georgia, and just wondering whether that will be something that he might be more inclined to do now that Mark Andrews is gone, and they don't really necessarily want to telegraph blocking or passing or anything like that when they have a tight end out on the field.
Yeah. I do. I think, one of the hidden things that we don't talk about much is how they'll miss Mark Andrews as a blocker. He's a significant player for the Ravens. He's really probably their best tight end blocker as well. Certainly, if you talk about what he does down the field, he's very effective. They do have other options there. Although each of Likely and Kolar has shown the ability to block at times, they've also had some very bad times as well. And Vokalek, a much bigger tight end, who was both a blocking and receiving threat in the preseason, would be one option. The other, who they released recently, but I don't think he's signed with anybody yet, is Eric Tomlinson.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think Tomlinson signed with anyone. That doesn't really seem a stretch at all that he would come back. But I've been bullish, and I think most of Ravens flock has been bullish on the ability of Likely and Kolar. They just need to get the reps in, and it's very fortunate that the next that they have this long period before the Chargers game, after the Thursday night game, as well as a bye week to really get some first team reps outside of game time to get their timing down and things like that, because they're going to be critical.
It would be hard to enumerate all of the ways in which Mark Andrews impacts this offense, because he's so central to it in terms of playing a lot of snaps, usually almost being a designated receiver when he's out there a lot of times, how he does on extended plays. But you got to start somewhere. And so let's start with extended plays, since that's a place where this kind of mind meld, which has gone on between him and Jackson since he came into the league. And by the way, 2018, he and Andrews were rookies at the same time. Jackson and Andrews were rookies at the same time. And from the very first time they stepped on the field together with the number 2 unit, they were kind of linked in terms of their ability. Jackson would look for him all the time. Andrews set the record in his rookie year for yards per target by a Ravens receiver that has never been broken. And never even matched by a wide receiver during that time at 11.04 yards per target. And since then, one of the things we've consistently seen is how Andrews always knows how to find space at the end of an extended play and has that great motor to keep working. Yeah.
I think this goes to my general feeling about how I feel about this team. I think this year, by far, is the team most equipped to deal with this loss in out of all the teams that Lamar has been on, and I don't think it's even close. And I think one of the areas where this shows up is the ability to kind of help out on an extended play. We have seen, Nelson Aguilar on the 9-second play break free in the end zone. We've seen in recent weeks Zay and Bateman break away on extended plays. Bateman recently in the end zone in a play that kind of reminded me a little bit of what was his name? He's now with the Steelers.
Boykin.
Yeah, Boykin. Yeah, Boykin against the Dolphins. Just sort of being thrown open a little bit in the end zone. And so you're seeing these really valuable reps go to these receivers as sort of a design in Monken's scheme, right? Like there's so many 3 receiver sets that we're seeing, and starting to pay off, and it's going to pay off major dividends in terms of the ability to make up for Mark Andrews' absence.
Yeah. I think you hit on a lot of the players that need to be those high motor guys who continue hitting plays. Would like to see more from Bateman over the middle of the field, doing things like that, and really kind of it's the figuring out how Lamar is going to be in a good position to throw you the football. Bateman has proved very adept at coming back for the football. It's one of the things I've been really impressed with him for. That's a great extended play technique. It's also a great extended play technique if you can, drop a guy and go to a space where Lamar can still get the ball, even though it's the space you're not supposed to throw to. And that's where Andrews was very special in terms of finding that. He'd go deep. He'd signal it somehow to Jackson, probably by telepathic message or whatever connection they kind of have. But Flowers is a guy who could drop coverage anywhere on the field. Anywhere on the field, he can lose a guy with an immediate shift. And so he might be the most important single player in that way. Beckham, I would look for him to be more of a guy who can maybe draw penalties at the point where he inflects. So you have extended plays, much increased chance for an illegal contact or a defensive holding call. And those are very valuable. Obviously, the Ravens have done a lot of their offense these last 3 weeks has been based on illegal contact, defensive holding, and even pass interference calls. And it's been something that the longer the play, the better your chance to get one thrown.
Yeah, I would. And as far as Beckham goes, it seems a little strange to say this after the week where he has sort of this breakout week that sort of illustrates that he has more left in the tank than maybe one might have thought, during the earlier part of the season. But I think this is highlighted even more by the loss of Andrews. I think they're going to have to really be very judicious with their usage of Beckham going forward, because he's proven to kind of have this like X factor when it comes to primetime games, playoff games, whatever. You're really going to need and want that guy to be available for you in the playoffs as somebody that, when the chips are down, you can when it's a high risk situation, he's gonna come through for you, and it's hard to quantify that, but for sure, Mark Andrews would have been one of those guys in that category that you would be counting on. Now that he's gone, you're going to want to be very careful with Beckham. And actually, while I was thinking about it, I was comparing him to a little bit to Anquan Bolden, our Super Bowl year. If you go back, Bolden's statistical season was okay, but nothing special. He only had 4 touchdowns. He had 912 yards or something like that, but only four touchdowns. You don't necessarily think that he's going to explode the way that he did in the playoffs. If you want to save some of that juice, I think you'd be well served to do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that there's some other things going on that are good reasons why they ought to be judicious about the snaps and the targets that Beckham gets, and that is that this is an opportunity. If you want to talk, half the building is destroyed, obviously, and your CEO says this is an opportunity for us to, but that's basically where we are right now. And this is an opportunity to force distribution of the football. And I really hope Lamar doesn't go to just the number 2 guy that he likes second best. And this is an opportunity to really spread the ball around, go to a lot of different receivers, put all sorts of stuff on the advanced scouting's plate for other teams. But there is another, what you said has kind of another component, is like, it kind of sounded like somebody who plays a lot of video games and always saves their healing potions. I'll call it that way. You understand exactly what I'm talking about here, is that if this isn't a critical juncture for the Ravens to make use of Odell Beckham with some extra targets, I don't know what is, because, they're in a position to get the number 1 seed or failing that, the number 2 seed in the AFC, which the drop off from 1 to 2 is a lot. The drop off from 2 to 3 is a lot. Yeah. They really, really want to get that 2 seed and the guarantee of 2 home games if they are in the playoffs.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wouldn't sacrifice a game for to kind of keep Odell's snap count down. But I think the Ravens would be very well served to be kind of intentional in terms of their distribution of targets. Really get those guys out there, different combinations, 2 tight end sets to give like Liam Kolar a lot of snaps. Try some different things with Bateman Zay. Rediscover Nelson Aguilar, who it rewards you almost every time you target him. There are still a lot of mouths to feed, Ravens should definitely make sure that they know what they've got with every receiving option before they go into the playoffs.
They certainly are still facing some very potent pass rush teams down the stretch. The 49ers is a very tough game. The Chargers is a tough game with or without Joey Bosa. Let's not forget, this is still a team that has Derwin James and can throw him at you whenever they freaking feel like it. And he's still a dangerous weapon there. This is a team that if you're looking at other teams, on the schedule, you still have to face Cincinnati again. We forget players on Cincinnati. It's like, well, Sam Hubbard is out. Thank goodness they don't have a pass rush anymore. Well, no, they have Miles Murphy or whatever, who's a 1st-round draft pick, and they have still Osai sitting around, who's been around for a few years back there. They still have plenty of weapons aside from Hendrickson, who's one of the best in the entire league. So they face a lot of teams that they're going to really have to need to scheme to keep off Jackson over the next few weeks. And I think that it's going to probably require more quick passes. And I think that also the more of that you do, the less you have to make up for Mark Andrews on the extended plays. So we've seen a lot of success throwing slants to Beckham. Well, I mean, Bateman has had success with that in the past too. He'd be a great one to do. Aguilar is a good one. You want to do some picks and rubs? This is the perfect time. If they're not tremendously long plays, they're kind of an extension of the run game sometimes, but they can create a big play. And now we see that Beckham and Bateman are both guys, and Aguilar also, who can actually bring some juice to the table after they catch the football when it's right on target where it should be. Now, don't force that guy to go down for the football. He's not going to go get a lot of yak. But if you throw the football at, shoulder to chest height and it's in front of the receiver, those guys have shown some real ability to pile up yak these last couple of weeks.
Definitely, and get some passes behind some bunch formations. We've had some great downfield blocking with likely continuing to show that ability. We've seen Aguilar do that. I mean, Keaton Mitchell,
that Keaton Mitchell block,
unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. It's a difference between a football nerd and just kind of a more casual fan. Everybody's talking about the Zay touchdown, but then we're all like, look at that downfield block.
Just the most incredible thing. It's you look at that geometrically, okay, and Keaton Mitchell's in the backfield and he's almost starting from a stopped position because he sees the pass goes out, and then he sees, oh, I could make a block. Whoosh. He went on effectively the diagonal. He's on the hypotenuse of that right triangle because basically Flowers took it directly vertical. And it may have been that Flowers actually reduced his speed to let Mitchell make a block. It kind of looks like that to me to let him set up, which, by the way, all the more great in terms of Flowers and what he does as a receiver, that he lets a guy set up a block for him. But Mitchell's catch up to that play is just, it's one of the, he's already had, 6-8 plays in his brief Ravens career that are just the kind of highlights you see out of a Bo Jackson or somebody when they come into baseball for the first time or when they go to the National Football League for the first time. It's like, he can do that, so just incredible.
It kind of reminds me of Tyreek Hill catching up to the other Chiefs receiver, that sort of thing. And yeah, I mean, imagine, Keaton Mitchell getting some blocking in front of him behind a bunch formation, right? Like a dump off to him. And then all of a sudden you've got, likely an Aguilar blocking downfield for him, 1 or 2 blocks, and he's taking it to the house.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, I love that no matter what, but Mitchell has been great in the having one man to beat situation because he's very elusive. He's got great contact balance. He's obviously got great speed to outrun angles. I mean, anytime where you can get him in a situation where you have 3 guys on one side and you can only get 2 of them blocked, that will often create a situation for you where Mitchell is incredibly effective. So I think that, by the way, that is one of the other points I want to make, is that getting the ball to the speed guys in space is going to be that much more valuable right now. And I do also want to credit Flowers for another thing, is we've seen some incredible downfield blocks from him as well these last few weeks. I think he had one on a touchdown that was just really exciting. It might have been a Gus Edwards touchdown, or it might have been a Lamar touchdown. I kind of forget, but it was either a run or a short screen to the left side, and he had a really good block that he maintained. Put up the number 1 finger at the end. It's like, yep, that was a class 1 block there.
Yeah, he's shown great spatial awareness, field awareness, whatever you want to call it. Just a good understanding of what he needs to do in that situation. And I kind of think that these sort of passes are evolving a little bit. I mean, I'm sort of seeing not so much behind the sticks or behind the line of scrimmage, which is good because and also just sort of you want a guy like Keaton Mitchell, you want a guy like Zay Flowers to already be in motion a little bit. You're taking away so much of what makes them special by making them stand still while they're catching, right? Just get them in motion a little bit, even if it's a kind of a screenplay or something to Keaton Mitchell, and because man, once he gets going, that's he's a threat to take it to the house.
I have to mention one other type of play that I've really appreciated seeing in recent weeks, and this is great because it takes away the need for some of the gadgetry with players like Flowers, who, we've talked any number of times about increasing Flowers' ADOT's really important, which means reducing the number of times he takes a jet pitch or he takes makes a play in the backfield, or is even used in any kind of decoy orbit motion kind of thing where you're trying to get somebody else open. I want to see him down the field, looking for receptions more there. And Keaton Mitchell can do most of the things that Zay Flowers can do. And he probably can do some other things that he can't do even better. But the one I want to see is draw plays to Mitchell. Now, the Ravens, with their new alignment, with not having Andrews as a safety blanket for Lamar, if I'm an opposing defensive coordinator, I'm looking to exploit that by letting my pass rushers basically go wild and see if I can contain Lamar with a spy behind that. So I say basically, if I got Myles Garrett and Zadarius Smith, go crazy. You go hunt Lamar right now. If you flush him, our guy's going to run him down. Our inside linebacker is going to run him down, and that's not your responsibility. Well, what that creates is opportunities for draw plays. For example, and other quick hitters that get the ball outside the pocket. Screen passes are another one. I think that Myles Garrett is such a freak. He can often, with his length, impact that. But the draw play that they ran with Mitchell against Cleveland is the kind of thing I love to see against pass rushers who are rushing themselves out of the play. I do think the Ravens will face a lot of that without having Lamar to have his primary emergency option available for what looks like the rest of the season at this point.
Yeah, I agree. That's a very effective play and shows some adaptability on Monken's part. I wanted to ask you, which player do you think, which receiving option do you think is most negatively impacted by Andrews' option, and then which receiver or receiving threat do you think is most positively affected by Andrews' absence, excluding the obvious answer of like Likely and Kolar?
Right. Okay. So you're going to stay away from tight end. This is interesting. Well, I think, potentially here's the great thing about it. It is a batch of targets that needs to be somehow otherwise redistributed. So it is possible that everybody is a positive, but if I'm talking about who might gain the least from it,
right.
It could be a player like Kolar where the trust bank account is not particularly high, but I think there will be opportunities forced upon it with what they're doing right now. I don't anticipate this will drastically change Ricard's role in the passing game, for example. But tell me, what are your thoughts?
I actually think this could. I think least benefit is probably the best way to say, because it's such a huge number that I think it's going to make all of them go up. But I think Zay is going to sort of fall into that category, because Zay, to me, is the other guy in the game that has a gravity to him, much the way that Andrews has. Defenders going to cheat to him, and now more than ever, they're going to pay extra attention. And I think that the Ravens can also use that to their advantage, yes. Right? Like Zay is going to be used to do some of that dirty work to really free up a lot of the other receivers. But that's just more attention to him.
That's a great point. And he's anytime that Zay Flowers runs some sort of vertical, deep over, post, all of those things, and Mark Andrews is underneath that. You force the safety on that side of the field to make a choice between coming up or dropping back. When it was Marquise Brown, they still pretty much respected Marquise Brown all the time and dropped back and would go after him. I don't think they're quite at that point with Zay right now. I think that they still basically cheat to Andrews a lot. Yet probably as this season has gone on, as Zay has proven that he's that, we're probably seeing more of a higher quotient of gravity, or whatever you want to call it, on Zay as we've gone along. I think it will become much more. I think you're right, and this should create opportunities for Bateman, Zeitler, Aguilar, both tight ends. More space for Mitchell, to get out there. Potentially more space for a guy like Edwards to run after the catch if you release him late. So lots of opportunities. I actually think if they could have Mark Andrews back for the playoffs, let me put it back with that, which they won't, is my understanding. But if they could, I almost could believe this would be a good thing for the Ravens in terms of figuring out what they have with some players and figuring out how to make do without Mark Andrews. And I guess you could even make a case for it in 2024 that it could be. But it's really hard to look at the Ravens' Super Bowl chances and see any way, but this is a very sharp decline in them to have Andrews out.
Yeah, the way that I put it is that the Ravens got worse, but the chances, I think it's likely that, no pun intended, that Lamar and any number of other players are going to get better because of it. But you can you can improve as a player and still have your overall chances get worse. And I think that's what happened this week.
All right. Such a pleasure always to do this show with you, Slava. Tell folks where they can talk football with you online.
I'm on Twitter at Slava Cooperstein. That's SLAVAKUPERSTEIN.
All right. Other folks out there, if you want to do a film study short, this is the time. We've got an extended week this week. We've got a bye week next week after the Chargers. Hit me up with your ideas. I want to do several of these shows and get them recorded. And obviously, we have some openings in the content schedule that'll help you get out there quickly. And I really do take each one of that talks to me seriously and really want to find that kernel of an idea that would make a good show. Hopefully we do about 15 to 20 minutes because we're trying to provide some shorter content that's an alternative to very lengthy offense and defense reviews that are out there and may intimidate people. For Slava Cooperstein, this is Ken McCusick saying goodbye. We'll talk to you next week on One Last Thing.